Exactly. So it would if you didn't think that this didn't happen, you would be stupid. If you have to expect it to happen because that would be the best way for them to gather intelligence. So you have to realize that military is in bed with Hollywood, or if maybe they are Hollywood. And
It,
there's a lot of theories when you go back to the old studios. There's a lot of military ties.
yeah.
It's the best way to spread your propaganda, either domestically or foreign, through Hollywood. And we see Disney was in charge of the propaganda through the CIAA, not CIA, CIAA, which was headed up by Rockefeller at the time.
Hmm.
He was in charge to go down to South America and create propaganda to stop the communism from coming up through, South America.
Yeah.
He was in charge of actually creating the British propaganda for World War II. He was in charge of and doing the American propaganda. That's why you see the Disney characters and playing the Hitler thing, in Disney.
Yeah.
This was the person that was in charge of creating propaganda to propagandize the American public and the rest of the world. So it should be expected that media and the Hollywood elite are involved in this.
Well, I want to. We're going to get into that, man. We're definitely going to get into that part of history, and as far as this, this actor-based reality has been
Crazy,
going
yeah.
on, and it's been going on a long, long time, and people don't realize how long it's been going on. I think for most of the listeners, they might be susceptible to understanding. Okay, well, this shooting was obviously a hoax. I mean, point at Sandy Hook, point at 9/11, point at some of these other shootings and other events, and people are starting to question it. They're like, "Wait a second,
Yes.
wait a second. Who's this guy? What's that guy?" And people are starting to question that. And we're going to get into the history of it. And I want the listeners to really pay attention when we get into the history of it, because this is a whole new level of red pill.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get into this to go that route because I hated history in school. It was the worst class for me. I just thought it was so boring and it just sucked. And maybe it's just because I had bad teachers, but I hated history. Now, after all this, I can't get enough of it. I just absorb everything that I can read, and I know that what I'm reading, of course, is bullshit.
Yes.
But I have the keys and the clues that when I look at that event, I know the Roosevelts. I know who they really are. So I can look at what
Yeah.
they put out as the official story and go, no, that's not exactly how it happened because I know who this person is. And these deals that you see being made between these two, of course, unrelated in the public's eye, but actually behind the scenes, they're family members. When you see these deals being done, you go, it just makes you sick. It totally makes you sick.
Well, here's one thing I want to bring up to my viewers, and I brought this up in live streams before, and one of the things that I brought up was the fact that the very first global television event was published out of Germany, World War II Germany. So television didn't really exist as we understand it today, or even 50 years ago, until World War II Germany.
1933, Berlin.
1933 Berlin, exactly. And so what we have here is a connection to 1933 Berlin, and we can get into World War II stuff in a moment. But what we have is a connection with media, with mass media through the television set. And we've already said, like, I mean, come on, turn your television off, man. If you want to get an idea of what's really going on, turn your television off. However,
Correct.
1933 Germany, television begins. Now, where is the connection between today's manipulation in popular media and the invention, not the invention of television, but how it really was presented to the world? And I think most of my listeners can understand that connection. Here it begins. And this is where you start to get into personalities, historical personalities. And I have to say this, when it comes to actor-based realities, you have to understand that what that means is that history, as we know it, is a part of that. It has been manipulated. It has been written by the winners, and this is where it's at.
Correct.
And there's characters at play that we can identify and show you, based on biometrics, that these individuals are a part of this grand fucking stage.
Yeah.
You know? So let's get into some of the history, man.
Sure.
Where do you want to start?
Well, let's here's something that you can see direct ties to that 1933, and this is something that people don't really realize that is happening in front of them. And there's all these theories about why, but I can tell you the real reason why. And this is the way the commentator speaks to the camera. They speak in that very mundane, the very monotone voice, and it's like a very strange presentation that the newscaster is talking about. The way that they're speaking like that comes from the fact that when TV was invented, they looked at each other and went, okay, now what are we going to put on this thing? What are we going to do? Well, of course, news, what's happening in the town, because they would have one TV in a town in, say, France or in Berlin, whatever, and everybody would go to this pub, and they would sit there and watch this one TV for an hour or 2 hours, whatever they had a day. So they didn't have any content to go on the TV.
Yeah.
So they relied on radio announcers to play these roles of newscasters. They were logical, choice, because they obviously could speak into the microphone. They had a good presentation, but they'd never been on camera before. So, that's why they looked weird when they're standing there in front of the camera. They just didn't know what to do with themselves. They're radio announcers. And that's why they kept that same affliction in their voice as radio announcers do. And you see it today in the news media. That's why they speak the way they do. Now, that's a direct link from day one. Content being made. Who are we going to get to do content? We'll grab the guys that are the best at it. That's radio people, because radio's been around forever. Radio was the biggest propaganda tool at that time. Pull them into this, and then it took off. So now you have no rights at that time. Nobody, there's no privacy rights. What are they going to do? They have to address all these laws, and they have to actually address reality when it comes to this new invention, this new creation. So at that time, when it comes to radio and DJs at the time, you see a lot of DJs with the fake names that they would use, like Wolfman Jack and things like that. Well, that studio, that radio station, gave that actor, that personality, that name. They gave it to them, but there's a reason why they do that. It's because they don't own that name. That actor, that DJ doesn't own the name. It's given to them. It's owned by the studio. Yes. They are going to play that role. And the reason why is in case they decide they're going to quit. Let's say they get famous and they're very well known, like Wolfman Jack was. And so all of a sudden he goes, I don't like my contract this year. I'm just going to go over to this other radio station and I'm going to do it over there. Well, no, you're not.
Wolfman Jack there.
No, you're not, because we own Wolfman Jack. You are the actor, but we own that name. You can't take it with you. So they use that as a way to protect their network. And this is what you see when it comes to bands and musicians at the time. Okay, well, if you own the media, if you are the studio, Hollywood studio, and you have control over what is being put out there and who becomes a star, you control this country. So if you want to be a star, you're going to be owned by this studio, and that's what they did. You signed up with a studio at the time, and then they would give you movie roles, and you would be, you're totally in line with the studio. You wouldn't go to MGM if you were working for Disney. You weren't allowed.
Yes.
You had to stick with your studio. That's your contract. Yeah. So that was for the same reason. In case they wanted to go somewhere else, you couldn't. It also means that the studio owned that character. And this is where you get into the old saying of the selling the soul to the devil. The studio owns the soul. They own that name. Yes. The actor doesn't. So they can control what happens to that actor. And the actor has to do what the studio says. You're going to be in this event. You're going to show up at this event. And you're going to be that character that we created. You don't own it. So, like, if you and I wrote a book together and we wanted to turn it into a movie, we own the characters in that movie. But is it better just to have that movie play one time with these new actors and then, that's it? Or is it more profitable if you're going to create stars that can be in many movies and you own them all and you own the name? It's a bigger profit, much more profit than just having a one-off star. You create these brand names, these old Hollywood stars that have go on and for history. You own that name. So the actor doesn't own it, but the studio does. Now, it's done that way today, And a lot of the things that you see, it's not real. They don't use their real name when it comes to movies and acting. They don't use their real name when it comes to these officials, as we've seen with the documents that the elected officials sign. It's a fake name. Now, you can argue, okay, it's for security reasons. Okay, I can understand that. You're a public official, maybe you're afraid, you got family and whatnot, you don't want them to be harmed. Okay, to a certain degree. When it comes down to it, though, and you're in charge of making laws that affect people, we have to be able to identify the person and validate that they are actually doing the right thing for their constituents and for this country. And that's what we haven't been doing, and we're not doing. So the blending of media, military, corporate, and all these different things, they're all in one big control sphere around us. Everything that we think we know comes from either things we see on TV, we read in books, we read on the radio, and all from other people that, of course, are getting their information from the same thing. Yeah. So we are propagandized with however they want us to be until you take away that propaganda and you see through what it is. And this is what I hope that some of your listeners, as crazy as all this sounds, yeah. I've been doing this for 9 years now, and my story has been the same. I've used my birth name when it comes to this, and that's another clue. They don't use a birth name. All these people that are in alternative media or all these other investigators, it's a good sign that if they're not using their birth name, then don't believe what they're saying, because they don't believe in it themselves and they're afraid to put their name on it. I'm not, and I take a lot of heat for it, but that's just the way it's going to be. Yeah. So, there's different things that you can use to validate a person that's saying this stuff to you, but just open your mind and just look at it from a legal standpoint, or if you're a healthcare individual, look at it from a HIPAA law standpoint. You can look at it from all different perspectives, but it all shows the same thing, that these people are not real, and the reality that we believe that is around us is real is not. It's an actor-based reality, and once you accept that, and once you see it all as fake, you'll go through this emotional roller coaster. And it's a painful experience of your mind starts to connect all these things together that you saw 9/11, World War II, Vietnam, Pearl Harbor, and you start to see these things that just don't make sense, and all of a sudden you're going to realize that it's all been staged. It's all been written in books by them to make a profit, to control us, to keep us where we are today.
Exactly.
It's horrible, but it's reality. And once you accept it, you'll feel a weight lifted off your shoulders, that it becomes so invigorating that you realize that the world is not as bad a place that they've tricked us into believing. And that gives you so much of just a better outlook, and just it gives your life back. And I get email after email after email of people from all across the globe saying, thank you for doing this. Thank you for putting your neck out there and taking the heat for it, because it's given me my life back. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, I used to be glued to TV. I couldn't get away from Fox News or CNN, whatever you wanted to watch. And I always worried about kids going to school, if somebody's going to put it up, and all these different things that I'm being bombarded with, that go TSA, a terrorist, oh my God, all this fear mongering that puts you in a state of just you're jumpy, you're reactionary, and that's what they want you to be. But once you realize what it is, you can step back from it and you get your life back. And you can breathe, and you don't have to, you're not stranglehold over you anymore. And there's no going back. Once you see it, that's it. It's all over with. You can't watch TV again.
Yeah. Once you see it, you can't go back, man. And I want to just take this moment to explain a little bit of my discovery of your work, and how what you just said came to me. And I'll explain it to the rest. And before I say that, I want to say this to the listeners. You thought Flat Earth was crazy? Get ready. This shit'll blow your mind. And I've expressed this to people I know. But when it came to your work, Ed, I think it was the Gabby Giffords was the first work I saw. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until the Dallas, what was it called again? I'm sorry.
The Occupy Dallas and Occupy Wall Street, yeah.
Occupy Dallas, Occupy Wall Street. That shit blew my mind. But again, as a layman, what do? I go, wow, this is mind blowing. I should do my own research, I think. I should look a little bit into this. And I remember there was a very small thing you mentioned, and you were talking about singer-songwriter, artists, musicians.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about that a little bit earlier, and I wanted to bring that up, and how it is often called legend making.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where they fake the deaths of these artists, and these artists come back. Oh, well, they don't come back literally, but the name exists, and they make a huge profit off their deathts.
Yep. And they all died at the same age.
27
24 years old, 27. Yeah. Come on. Come on. And we're like, well, yeah, well, obviously it happened. Like, no, think about it. Just think about that. What are the odds of that happening?
Yeah. They all die at the same age. Their record sales go up incredibly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, I want to get into how when David Bowie died, and and some guy came on and talked about it, and he looked exactly like him.
Yeah.
And nobody batted an eye. But when
that wasn't him though. That wasn't him. But because I looked at the ears, I wanted to check it out and make sure. So they obviously did that on purpose, though, just to mess with people. They did that on purpose.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. But this is the one thing that I did on myself by myself to kind of verify some of the stuff you're saying, and it was easy. For a layman, it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
When it was a comparison between Amy Winehouse and Lady Gaga.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I know you mentioned that in the past, but very briefly, and I thought, well, this is easy to look up. I can go look up Amy Winehouse. I don't even listen to them. I didn't listen to them. I didn't care about them. So I went and looked it up, and I looked at first thing I did was I looked up pictures of Amy Winehouse and Lady Gaga, and I'm like, well, they look exactly the fucking same. Like they're the fucking same, man. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to do the ear biometrics, but I can look up some articles and stuff like that. And so I look up some articles, and I find out that Amy Winehouse says, and if you don't believe me, go Google search this shit because it's easy to find. What happens is that not Amy Winehouse, but Lady Gaga, she says, she goes, there was an interview with her on an article, and she said, we want to make a movie about Amy Winehouse. And apparently this was some drunk chick that made music and died of alcoholism, right? I didn't listen to her. And there was an article where it's like, oh, Lady Gaga, Amy Winehouse died. Wouldn't you like to make a movie about her? And she goes, oh, I'd love to. I've never met her. I've never met her, but I'd love to play her as an actor. And I thought, okay, come on, man, really? This is this is basic. This is basic stuff beyond biometrics. It's just basic fucking common sense.
Yeah, and the only reason why I sort of went into the Amy Winehouse and the Lady Gaga thing, and because I tried to keep it, I try to keep what I do in with elected officials and people like that,
of course.
But when it came to her, she's so influential, and she could control a lot of different things. She was getting into politics and making comments about guns and things like that. So I felt that it was okay that I branched out and showed that. But I wanted people to understand what the legend making. It's that industry is very particular. If you're a jazz musician and you have a big following, you have a whole big audience, and you're playing jazz, and all of a sudden, as a musician, I mean, I play bass. I like all different types of music. Yeah. I like heavy stuff, and I like jazz. I like all different things. If I had a following that only looked at me as one type of musician, and all of a sudden I released an album, that was a totally different genre of music, it would cause a big riff, and people wouldn't. It would totally tear your fan base apart. As this metal person, this Marilyn Manson person is now singing classical music, which he does. He likes that stuff. Yeah. But there's a reason why. I could get into that one. But the marketing behind that individual, the brand building, the brand name is very important. And in that industry, in particular, the music industry, it's so wow. I mean, you can insult a person about anything about them, but if you insult their music, man, you hit right to the core, and you can get people to be violent. So when it comes to music, there is identity behind, I like this band, and you identify yourself with that band, and somebody insults that band, you take it personally. So, you can understand that if a musician wants to branch out, and of course, if actors do it too, musicians want to make more money and make other albums, they want to exercise their talents and skills. So they maybe create a new character that,
Yes. And
it's logical.
Not only make a new character, but they kill off the character that's bound by that contract.
Yeah. So it's when the musician, and don't get me wrong, when I say that these people are fake and all that, I'm not saying that they don't have skills, that they're not playing their instruments or they're not singing. These individuals are very talented. They are the top. They are, you don't get on Saturday Night Live just because, you throw a couple jokes together. You got to have a whole thing to go with it. And if the audience doesn't like you, then it doesn't matter if you're related to, whoever. It doesn't matter. The audience doesn't like you, you don't get in. So these people are very skilled, very talented. But of course, when it comes to certain actors, they have writers that write for them. But hey, that's whatever. They still can have to present that information to the audience and be liked. So, when you have a studio that looks at a Elvis, let's say, and I've worked on this before, Elvis, people go, oh, here we go, Elvis,
No, Elvis, that's great.
Elvis never wrote any of his music. He didn't write one single song. It's all remakes of everybody else's songs, and people go, oh, really? He never wrote any of his songs. So he's basically a character that they put in there to play other people's music. So do you really want to see a 90-year-old Elvis, signing autographs at a mall? Or do you want to see the Elvis that's in your mind that the last time that he played, or the video of him, rocking the stage, and that's burned into your brain? That's Vegas. Elvis. He lives forever. As that age. Yes. And they sell albums, and it just makes the value of the stock of that person just go through the roof. Jimi Hendrix signed guitar, $500,000. Stevie Ray Vaughan signed guitar, another $1 million. But then when you realize behind it that, and I did Stevie Ray Vaughan, and actually, you can actually find him. You can find him on my Facebook friends list, him and his girlfriend. And the reason why, and this is a good one, because there's a picture of this dude, and I'm not, because he's related to one of the big people involved in all the JFK stuff. I'm not going to say it right now, but you can find the work that I've done on it. But he's got a picture of him holding his granddaughter, and he's out by the pool, so he doesn't have a shirt on. And you look at this guy's chest, and you can see the outline of the peacock tattoo that he had on his chest. And I'm like, oh my God. So, and what does this dude do for a living? He plays in a band. And what music does he play? He plays Stevie Ray Vaughan music. I mean, it's like, oh, I just can't believe they're actually just being that blatant. But anyway, the musician, hey, he's got to play, so what's he going to do? Of course he's going to play that type of music. And man, he plays well. He plays just like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Well, there's a reason. But yeah, exactly. And people go, oh, that's impossible. No, well, look at his girlfriend, and then look at Stevie Ray Vaughan's girlfriend. It's the same woman.
Exactly.
It's the same woman.
Exactly.
Because they keep it together like that, and they do it their whole lives.
They all play the same game, man.
Exactly. But the money that these people make for the studio, and like I said, when the studio sees this, and they have a math equation behind it, and they go, well, this person is worth more dead than alive. Well, we'll kill the character off. And how are we going to do it? Oh, we'll make him drive off a cliff, James Dean. We'll do all these, whatever. He'll kill himself he'll kill himself on the toilet. He's the king. The throne. So yeah, they do these things because it's a psychologically written script that sticks in your mind, and it plays well to the TV, and people remember it. And it's a psychological manipulation of the media, the marketing.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I can understand why they do that in that field. It's an ugly field when it comes to music. But and the same thing happens with oil and gas industry, with telecom.
Yes.
These people were playing the same game. It's all for profit, and the corporation has the same corporate rules. Doesn't matter if it's a music industry, conglomerate, or if it's Disney. It's the same corporate rules. That's profit above people, no matter what. And that's what it all boils down to.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And like I said, that's all it takes is a little bit of your own investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And just look at the stories. That's what I did. I just looked at the stories, and I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense.
Yep. Well, let's look at it this way. If a corporation is for profit, and even the nonprofits are for profit, especially the nonprofit ones are for profit. And if you ever see a nonprofit saying that we're collecting money to cure cancer, bullshit. Call them bullshit right to their faces, because a nonprofit that is in existence because of a disease or whatever, is not going to cure the disease, because the disease is what gets them their profit.
Yeah.
So they cannot, by corporate law, make decisions that damage the, and of course the corporation is considered a person. It's a legitimate
Yes.
person.
Corporation
They
is a person.
cannot make decisions that will harm the corporate body or their business. They won't do it. So whenever they say they're going to cure this disease, no, it's not going to happen. Now, you say Ronald McDonald House, where they give money to families with kids that have cancer to help their families go through, that's fine, because, you know, they're helping a family out when it comes to a time of need. But if they ever say we're taking this money to cure this disease, no, that's a lie. So, you know, you have this corporation that is out for profit, and it's the same corporation that, say, runs this country, the office of the president. Every decision that comes through that corporation has to be a profit-based decision. He's always going to make a decision based on the best profitability of that situation. It doesn't matter if it's Hillary Clinton, it doesn't matter if it's Trump, it doesn't matter if it's Bush. They are just the figurehead that is basically the face of the corporation.
Yes.
And they have to do the same thing. Doesn't matter if it's Kaiser Permanente Hospital, where I've exposed the CEO. It doesn't matter if it's Walmart, where I've exposed their CEOs and their board of directors. They all run under the same corporate rules. So you have to expect this to happen. And you have to expect the media. Let's say, you know, you're looking at this event happen 9/11. You see all these public publishers, all these books on 9/11, okay? Do you think for 1 second that a publisher is going to put something in a book that's going to expose the truth and tell on themselves or other people in their business? It's never going to happen. So if you think that you have an event and, oh, you have this book that the Masons have, oh, and it's going to tell you something, the Mason book, or it's the Jewish book, the Jews right here, it says it right here. It's all, you know, if you think that they're going to print something that's going to give you the truth, or make a video that's going to be the truth, then you're fooling yourselves.
Yes.
It's not going to happen. So you have to go into these situations with the mindset that what they're going to tell you is going to be a lie. It cannot be the truth. Now, how much of a lie, it just depends. But when you start to understand and learn to read between the lines, that's when the truth becomes available.
Yes.
So anything that you see on the TV, you know, they're promoting an alien abduction thing, whatever, it's all fictional. It's all fake. It's content. Yes. And that's how they make their money. They don't care what's on the network as long as it's making
what was
profit.
That quote? What was that quote you said?
Sumner Redstone, who is basically owner of, he's the primary shareholder of CBS. He owns National Amusements. He's one of the conglomerate owners, Sumner Redstone. He was the one that coined the term content is king. Yes. And I put him in one of my videos because he also did a follow-up on that in a more recent interview where he said, you know, I'm the one that coined content is king. He said, but content is king, but distribution is a near prince. So right there, he's telling you exactly what's going on. And in that same video, I also have Michael Eisner, who was the former CEO of Disney. He talks about what he's doing now. The reporter says, so what are you doing now since you're not with Disney? He goes, well, I'm focusing on creating content and the content delivery system of how it's going to get to the people. Right there. He's telling you something that's important, very important. And the reason why is because the laws that are guiding the broadcast, the over-the-air broadcast, your TV that you get for free, there's different laws that govern what they do, as opposed to your internet provider or for your cable, which is a subscription based. They want to move everybody from TV to a paid base because of the reason, if you pay them for that subscription, that means that you're paying for their content and they can show you anything they want. There's no laws, there's no rules that they can't show. Like on broadcast TV, there's a hoax rule that the FCC has, and you can pull up the FCC's license and all their laws. It's the hoax rule, where if you see something on your TV that you know is a hoax, and this is what I tell people, when you saw the Gabrielle Giffords thing, I said this on Joyce Riley's show, you can write to the station manager. It has to be a registered letter, so you got to identify yourself to them and all that, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. You have to do the registered letter so you get the receipt that they got it. And you have to say that this is a hoax event. This is the reason why. I don't want you showing this anymore. Now, the lawyers that are at that station, the lawyers always err on the side of, you know, caution. We're not going to show this if it even remotely threatens our license, because that's their business. They can't make decisions that is going to harm their business, so they won't show it. And that was the key that I told people. This is a way to fight back. Send this letter out about the Giffords event to all the news stations, and they have to stop or they'll lose their license. And you see a lot of times with these events that I cover, within a day after me releasing the information, it disappears. The whole thing just gone. And you're like, whatever happened to that event? Nope, gone. And you go online, Google has wiped all the images of it. You can't find any reference to it. That's the reason why they do that. It costs them money to do that. So, of course, if a corporation is going to spend money to do it, there's a reason that they have to do it. So, yeah, whenever you see these events, make sure, that you grab all the video footage that you can, because it's not going to be there in a couple years or after I expose it. I guarantee you it's not. So
I have the FCC broadcast hoaxes up on the screen.
That looks pretty light. That used to be a pretty long form. I think they might have changed it since, but I'm sure it has the same content where, they can't show things that are hoax, or they can't show things that would get people to actually act out in a criminal fashion. They can't show you a riot and make you believe that they're coming down the street to get you, so somebody actually shoots out their door and tries to kill somebody. That's something that they can't do. When it comes to broadcast, when it comes to the subscription based, they can do it.
That's the difference, man.
Yeah.
Here it is, the broadcast of hoaxes. The rule prohibits broadcast licenses or permittees from broadcasting false information concerning a crime or catastrophe.
But if there's no crime.
Yeah.
But if there's no crime, but you think there's a crime, that's why you see all these police shootings and police beatings, and they investigate the police officers involved, and they go, well, there's no finding of guilt, because it didn't happen. Of course there's no finding of guilt, but they're not going to tell you that the reason why there's no finding of guilt is because it was fake. They just tell you, that there's no reason to have a guilty verdict, and people go crazy and they say, you're covering up information, you're hiding stuff from the people. No, they're not. There was no finding of guilt because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, it's not a crime. So then they get around this law.
Yeah.
Totally get around this law.
All right, let me go into some of the comments, because I don't have super chats. My live streams and my channel, I don't make any money. So I want.
Well, neither do I. I'm not even allowed to have a chat. I can't even do live streaming on mine. I'm blocked.
Oh, that's fucking horrible, man.
Yeah.
I've been there before, but not permanently. I want to go back to some of the chats here, because I got to give these people that are talking here, because I don't. In most of these the people that you listen to on YouTube, they have a super chat, and then you have to pay money to actually be heard, and I believe that's a great thing, especially if you have thousands of people trying to say something.
Sure.
I don't. So I want to go through some of the chats here. Let's see. We got May Kong Farang. He says the Las Vegas shooting movies are going to be good, to be honest. Yeah, they might make movies about that.
Of course they will, because that's more money.
Yeah.
If they think there's going to be a profit, they will. But the Vegas shooting, you said something that's key right now, because I just got kicked off of Facebook for 30 days because I exposed an actor, and that's Paul Aston, John Aston's brother, who played the role of Gene Rosen in the Sandy Hook, but he also played the role of the shooter's brother in the Vegas thing. So that's the person that basically got me kicked off of Facebook for 30 days right now. And if anybody Facebook people are out there listening to this, that's the reason why I can't comment on what you're sending me. They're sending me comments, and I'm like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I can't send anything back. So
yeah, you guys should know he's this actually today, wasn't it? Today?
Yeah, yesterday. Yesterday, yep.
Yesterday, Ed just got kicked off of Facebook. He got a 30-day ban. Right before
something that I put out years ago. This is something I put out a long time ago.
No,
it's just all of a sudden now.
It's for them. It's all retroactive, man. You could have made a crime 1,000 years ago, even though it doesn't match up with what a crime is today, and they'll still put you in jail. They don't care. They don't fucking care.
Yep.
What else we got here? The shoe bomber didn't have $75.
That's right.
To get through fucking.
Because why he didn't have it? Because he paid it for his dues that he had to do for the Arizona. What was it? Arizona Independent Film something that he was a member of. That I have a picture of him standing there with the meeting with all the other film people.
The shoe bomber was a hoax too, gentlemen.
Yeah.
An absolute hoax. That's why he didn't have to pay the $75. Because he was supposed to get on that plane and do that shit.
Yeah, I don't even think any of that happened. I mean, it's so easy for the media just to say something happened and to hire an actor to say they were there and saw it, and to show some cop cars outside of the airport with the lights on, and you go, oh, well, that event must have happened. Must have. When it just didn't even. The whole thing was just made up. I mean,
well, that's the whole point, man. Like,
yeah,
we're so busy trying to interpret this media that's driven into our heads.
Yeah.
That we can't step back and say, wait a second, maybe this is all bullshit.
Yeah. That's the thing. We never thought to look at it from that perspective, and I didn't either. I mean, everybody that I know, and myself included, we all have been raised with blinders on, conditioned state that our parents have given us information, that the media gives us the same information. We go living life with our friends giving us the same information, and all of a sudden, someone like me comes along and I show you, hey, look, this is not real because of this. And you can either take it one route and go, man, maybe I need to look into this and take it seriously, or you can look at it as it's a direct threat to your reality, and you go, oh, man, that's crazy, you're nuts. And at that point, when you run into somebody like that, there's nothing that you can do or say. You can't show them 1,000 smoking guns. It's not going to make a difference in their life. They've already built a wall. That's it. So just back up, and they have to do it on their own time. And trust me, eventually they will, because this all builds up. All these fake events. I mean, remember, like I said, it started with the clock tower shooting in UT. When I started with that, that was the first school shooting in the United States.
Yep.
People didn't know. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody's actually shooting people from the clock tower. Well, that is fear mongering. It puts a mentality in the public's eye that, oh my God, I can't believe this happens. Well, it doesn't happen. These school shootings don't happen, and there has never been a school shooting in the United States. And I can't speak for other countries because I just go by what the evidence I found here, and there's never been a school shooting here, period. Well, and I will debate anybody on that, and you can show me, please show me what event you think is real and give me the reasons why, and I will show you what I have on it, because I probably have covered it.
All right, well, here's what we'll do. We'll come back to the UT clock tower shooting, and I'll put that up. But I got to take a piss, so I'm going to play an ad. I'm going to play an advertisement for about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and
sounds good,
and discuss that. So if you have to take a piss or get a drink or a coffee,
yeah, I'm going to go get a beer.
All right, man. All right, so we'll be back in about 3 minutes, gentlemen. An ad will play, and we'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in. All right, we're back, gentlemen, and remember, there's no ladies here, and I don't, I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that, Ed, but
I saw that. I was getting, I saw some.
This is a MGTOW channel, so we ban any woman in the chats.
Oh, do you? Because I know I have a lot of listeners that are actually female. I'm sure they're pissed off right now.
Well, that's okay. They're not in the chats, because if they were,
okay.
If they were, they would have been banned, and I didn't see anybody getting banned tonight.
I think you're missing one, because there's somebody in there that I know but they got a man's name because they do it on purpose.
That's the whole thing. If you can fool me, good for you.
Yeah,
good for you.
Yeah. And she does this because, she's actually said that, when she is their man character online, she gets treated different, and, different things happen than when she's a female. So she's like, I got to play it the way, she's a good person, though. She's really good. So.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I have no problem with that. If you're a woman in the chat and you got away with it, kudos for you, man. Good job. But this is a men's forum. It's meant for men. If you have women folk that want to hear what we're talking about, spread it to them. Share the video with them. They can hear it, but they can't be in the chat, and that's the number one rule of this forum of my channel. Because and I'll tell you why. It's because I really want a place for men to discuss issues. That's what I want.
Sure.
And in reality, for a lot of men, they don't have those spaces anymore. I mean, the Boy Scouts are now
Yeah, I've seen Jordan Peterson talk about that one.
It's sad, man.
Yeah,
like
but then you see the ones that are the men, the transvest, the the whatever, and they're playing women's sports and just dominating,
exactly,
just destroying them. And it's like, come on, man,
exactly,
uh,
exactly.
yeah,
Let's. That's why I just want to make this a space for men. All right, there's a
yeah,
lot of space for. I mean, you can go to a salon that says no men allowed, right?
sure, sure,
Can you go to a barber shop where no women are allowed?
yeah,
No, you can't, because they'll
yeah.
complain about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
now,
mean, I'm a person that doesn't believe in all these rules and stuff that you can't do something in your body, you can't put a drug in your body, or you can't do this, you can't do that. As long as you're not hurting somebody else, you should be able to do it. And
exactly,
if it's something that you want to do with your business, do it, because it's just going to word of mouth will get around, and your business might go out of business or might get more popular because of it. But
exactly.
it should be up to the free market to be able to decide that, and people. And I hate when government gets involved. I hate when they start making rules like that. It's nonsense. And Canada, you're up in Canada right now, right?
Yeah, and Canada's
You,
shit.
you guys with the free speech laws and the non-gender stuff, where you can
Yeah,
go to jail for it. I mean, are you
yeah,
kidding me?
it's
Are you
horrible, man.
kidding me?
It's
That is
fucking
just that
horrible.
right there. That is the ultimate, just unbelievable, just government just gone out of control. That,
Exactly.
oh
I
man.
know. Canada's really, really bad. My channel is basically just a male space. It's a male barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it
Sure.
is. It's you come in here, you get your hair cut, you get a trim on your beard. If a woman comes knocking on the door and say, I'd like a perm and some color in my hair. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's down the street. You don't come in here. This is for us, okay?
It's the man cave. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it.
You know what I'm saying? You remember in the old days when they had like these men clubs where no
Sure.
women were allowed?
Sure.
Like
That was
what?
called the Masons. and, and then there was complaints and everything, and then they had, the female version of it.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
what happened when the females came in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They went to
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah.
you leave it alone. Like, look, you can have your all-female swimming pools. You can have your all-female salons. You can discriminate against men. Fine. Okay, I get that. That's great. That's your space. This
Hmm.
this is my space.
Sure. I can agree with that.
And
I can see it.
this is the space for men. All right, dude. You come in as a man, and you can talk as a man. And this is the most beautiful thing about it. As a man, you speak more honestly when there isn't a woman around.
Mm, yeah. I
It's
mean,
come on,
I
man.
speak I speak honest all the time, but there's certain things that I just wouldn't even talk about if a woman was around. But that's just,
Exactly.
yeah. But I still speak honestly. I still,
But,
it's
but that's
still,
my point. That's my
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I
my whole
got you.
point. So
Yeah.
so that's why this is what it is. So
Yeah.
if you have female listeners that want to be a part of the conversation, I'm sorry you can't. However, you can listen to this stream. You can listen to it, and when the stream is over, you can make comments all you want.
Sure.
But this is just it's just that one night that men get to hang out. Can we just hang out and talk?
That's one of the things that I look at what's going on with the work that I do, and then you look at all these different things that are happening in society, and of course I know that a lot of it's fake, I know a lot of it's staged, but they're doing it for a reason. But when you ultimately look at when government gets involved in things where they start to
Yep.
give preferential treatment to a certain race or to a certain sex, when that starts to happen, and hey, I understand certain people have it worse off than others, I know that, but government shouldn't get involved in it because that's not their place. It should be
Exactly.
community gets involved and helps out like that. That's fine. But the minute that government starts to give special treatment to one class or to one whatever, then the whole thing is ruined, because it's eventually that person or that group will start to grow, and it'll start to fester into what we see now with this binary gender or whatever the hell they're calling it now. This I cannot believe. I mean, even when they started doing the bathroom thing where they were saying the
Yes.
non-sex thing, that to
Yes.
me, when I went, You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding.
But it's a
There's not
reality.
serious, but it's real. So it's just getting to the point where they're just making people just completely idiots. They're just walking around idiots. I don't care what you want to believe about yourself, what you want to call yourself. That's fine. That's fine. Do whatever you want, as long as you don't force your beliefs on me and make me have to do something because of what you believe. I'm not playing your game because you want to be delusional and think that you're a woman just because you're a man though, but you're a woman. That's fine for you. All more power to you to do it. Great, go at it, but just don't try to make me
Yes.
playing your game, because I'm not going to do it.
Well,
And if I were in Canada, I'd be arrested. That's
Yes.
just crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like, how many women do you think were involved in the planning of the invasion on D-Day?
Man,
Really? Come on.
I know.
There was none.
Yeah. I've heard Jordan Peterson and a bunch of other people talk about, the men, of course, have the most suicide rate, the high suicide rates, but yet, all these other things, these other people in whatever groups that, we got to address the suicide rate of them. But when it comes to men, there's a double standard, and I can understand that.
So,
I can say.
So for my listeners, I'm trying to red pill the king of red pills. On concepts of men and women right now.
Yes,
I'm hearing it live.
I understand. Yeah.
You're hearing me try to red pill the king of red pills.
Yeah, we were talking in the break. We were talking about religion and things like that.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I just cannot understand how women actually take, and they call themselves a Christian or whatever they want to call themselves, but they take that book in their hand and say it's the Bible and blah blah blah. The Bible says this, the Bible says that. I'm like, that book was not written for you. You weren't even allowed to read at that time.
No.
Women were treated like trash, treated less than a dog. You were treated as property, but yet you're telling me that you believe in this book, that basically that book is not for you. It was never written for you, and it was basically, if you believe in that book, then you need to read some certain passages when it comes to women and how they're supposed to treat women in that book, because you wouldn't be backing that book or promoting it at all if you really, really looked at it in the sense that it was written. I mean, it's crazy. Hey,
I don't know if you know this, Ed, but I converted to the Islam religion when I was in Indonesia, because my now ex-wife was a Muslim, and I had to do it by law.
Man,
now
that's crazy.
I wasn't religious at all when I made that conversion. I just did it because I've got to get married and whatever. I don't care. I'll be a Muslim, no problem.
Sure.
I'll become a Muslim. So I did. Now, in my studies of that religion, in the fact that I couldn't learn it from my ex-wife because she herself said, "Oh no, that's a man's job."
Yeah, she's not allowed to teach you anything. That would be that would be bad.
I can't teach you that shit. No. You have to find a man. So I'm like, what the fuck? Really?
Yeah.
I just converted to marry you, and now you can't fucking at least give me some advice? What the fuck?
Religion is the worst, absolute worst creation that mankind has ever come up with. It is the most stifling, the most repressive. It has more blood on its hand than any war, than any craziness that you want to think of in history. It is a problem that is a brain virus, in my opinion. It infects people, and it makes them just look at things in an unrealistic way. They have no common sense. It's just, I cannot understand how they can't look at that book and see that it's copywritten London, England in it, and you're allowed to pass it out all over the globe for free except London, England, because they have the copyright on it.
Yes.
You're kidding me. So I mean.
Well, let's get a little bit to that. Let's get into a little bit of that.
The Pope.
We'll get into the Pope. And the other thing I wanted to bring up for the listeners is that I want the listeners to understand that, okay, I converted a Muslim. I understand the Quran. All right, I read the Bible and the Quran and all that stuff. But don't throw me into one bus or the other. All right, not yet. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you go back into the history of the Christian religion or the Catholic religion, you have to go back to the Bible that everyone reads today.
Mm-hmm. King James.
And that Bible is the King James Bible. All right?
And we're laughing for a reason.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
And okay, the King James Bible, I want everybody to understand this. This is, look it up if you don't believe me. It was the first book published when the printing press was invented.
The Gutenberg Press.
Which was a Gutenberg. Now,
that's a Jewish name.
Yeah, pay attention to the suffix of the name. Berg, Greenberg.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
The Berg suffix is somehow very popular with these families. I don't know why, but they love it. And Berg means, in German, it means mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And they love that name, and I have my own opinions on why and where that name came from. But that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that the Bible that everyone reads today, the King James version of the Bible, and God, man, I've just done live streams with Catholics who have told me that is the Bible. That's the only Bible. But there's 1,000 different versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And new versions of it.
Yep.
But the Gutenberg pressed version of that Bible, family member names, remember this, the Bergs, was the one that was first produced by this incredible invention that allowed all the peasants, according to history, to understand their religion.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And do you think that a king, a royal, a ruler of the time, somebody who had ultimate power, and the crown is supposed to be an embodiment of the God itself.
Yes.
But a king would actually write in a book, or actually have the book with scribes rewritten, whatever you want to call it, but it would actually produce a book with his name on it that would tell people, the peasants, to worship anything other than the king.
Yes.
To worship a peasant man that is against the king at the time, who is against the royals, to worship that man instead of the king. Now, come on, people. Yeah. Come on, logic. Just,
Well, could you imagine, like, you're King James, right? And it's the, 13th century? When the fuck did that come up?
What castle are you into? What castle were you born in? And where is your body right now? Castle Holyrood? R-O-O-D? Holyrood? Really?
Yeah.
Holyrood.
So you're King James, and you're like, all right, like the peasants, they're unsettled, you know, like we're not giving them enough food and stuff, and they're unhappy. They want to understand what's going on. So, well, how about this? We rewrite the Bible, and we print it for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and while we're at it, we'll create this thing called confession, where we'll have them telling themselves to the priest, and then the priest will come tell us what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Yeah, man.
So
they go, oh, we got this new invention. Hey, by the way, my name's Berg. I learned how to print stuff faster. Like, we don't have to write it anymore by hand. We can do this a lot faster. King James is like, oh, that's fantastic. Well, what should we print? Well, let's print the Bible. I mean, that's...
Yep. The most oppressive, the most just warmongering, hateful just thing that puts women in its place, makes sure that women stay there and don't say anything to men. You know, it sets all these stupid rules that...
I mean, the whole... From beginning to end, it was basically, well, hey, I'm the king. You got this printing press. Nice job, Jew. I like what you've done. Why don't we take this and we print this Bible the way I like it, and we distribute it to everybody. I don't care if they can't read.
No, we'll send it to all my royal family members, all in other countries and all in other continents that but we'll predate the thing and make sure that it's really really old, but not as old as everybody else that we rip the stories off of. Rip the stories off the Egyptians, rip the stories off of everybody else. But yet it's really, we'll just have them change this name to Habib instead of Smith, and just make it so it blends in with the culture, and we'll hand it to all our royal family members, and then they'll be able to use it, and they'll create their own gods, and it'll be perfect.
Yes.
We'll rule the same way on all the continents.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. And they're like, okay, well, King James said, like, well, okay, I know the populace can't read because we never taught them to read. They can't read Latin. Fuck that. They don't know how to read it.
We don't want them to read.
Yeah, we don't want them to read, but we'll print it anyway. We'll pass it out, and then we'll teach them how to read what we printed. How about that? And it fucking worked.
Yeah. Oh, it worked. It worked. I think it worked better than anything that they've ever done. It is the best-selling book of all times, of all history.
Yes. And
it's done so much to split up mankind into these groups that are just warring and hate-filled. And during our break, I told you a story about when I met with the family directly, and I told them what's going to happen in the future if they don't straighten their shit up. Yep. But I also told them, that these people are the ones that they are the bloodline that go back through the King James. They are the actual bloodline. So they know what they're doing. They've been doing this forever, and this is what they base their control on. And it's easy to be king when you know what's going to happen, when you control the script. So they're not going to change. They're just going to keep on doing it the way it is. But they know that a unified voice, a people that has power is when we all get together and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to believe your 9/11 story about the Pentagon until we see all the camera footage. Yeah. All the camera footage, not 5 little frames, fuzzy frames from across a field. We want all the camera footage. But people don't think about that, and all of a sudden, the government passes out those 5 fuzzy frames because they know what it's going to do. It's going to cause fighting, conflict. People are going to pick sides, and people are going to fight. And they know as long as they can divide and conquer, they're going to stay in power.
Well, could you imagine? Could you imagine in King James times, there's some peasant. He's like, "What is this book? I can't even read it. I need some evidence. What the fuck is this?"
That's when they invented the guillotine.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is exactly where we are, man. The equivalent of the printing press in the modern times, in the King James version of the Bible, is the modern media of television. Well, first the television, and guess who started that? Mr. Hitler.
Yeah, well, and we see the work that I've done on that, where it's the same German, ruling family that got kicked out of Germany because they were being they were just warmongers. And they are the same bloodline, same family that we still see in positions of power today in our government. They haven't changed. They haven't lost the war. They just changed sides. That's all they did. They just relocated. And when they got kicked out of Germany, the Emperor Wilhelm got kicked out. Where'd they go? Well, they just they died off or whatever. No, that's not exactly what happened. Well, when you think about the reality of it, when you see Teddy Roosevelt standing there with Emperor Wilhelm and his whole entourage and everything, and you see that, man, they kind of look alike, and you see, all these connections to that family, the Roosevelts, and to ruse somebody is to trick them. You start to put a picture when it comes to our history, our timeline, that is completely manipulated. And once I've said this 1,000 times on different radio shows, once in power, always in power. They will never give up the position because they don't have to. They just pass it on to the next person who we think, as the peasants, we think that person's not related. We don't know that when you see Ross Perot, you see Bill Clinton, and you see H.W. Bush standing on the stage when they all ran together, that, oh my God, they're actually all related. They're family. So it doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't matter. There's the same family. They are governed by the same rules, and it's the same thing over and over again. And it's going to be the same because corporations, because governments, because military, they don't like change, and they have it the way they want it. So there's nothing going to change. People are like, well, what's the end game, Ed? What are they doing all this for? The end game is today, is yesterday, is tomorrow. It's the same thing. They don't want change because change threatens their position, and they like it the way it is. So it's going to stay the way. It's not going to change. So unless the people, us, we start to change and we start to not accept what they're doing and we start to put aside all the things that they've fed us that make us all hate one another or pick a side when it comes like 9/11, like I mentioned, and we have to stand together and say, look, no, this is not going to happen. No, we're not going to put up with this anymore. And I was in the military. I hate to say this, but I have to say this. When people stop joining the military, then you're going to start to see some changes, because the military is the thing that's eating up all the tax money. It's the thing that the reason why they suck all the money out of you is to mainly go to the military, mainly go to funnel to make these war toys, to mainly go to these campaigns to go grab oil and to grab other natural resources of other countries. It's their tool that they use. And being in the Air Force, when I looked at Dick Cheney, I was also worked at Halliburton too. When I see Dick Cheney as the vice president during the war, and they send Halliburton over there to, get the wells in the Middle East, I'm like, there's a thing called conflict of interest that just really is a concept that is not even talked about. It's not even discussed. And it is a reality that people have to understand, that corporations are the control factor of this country. And it's just until the people stop letting them do what they're doing, then, it's just going to keep on being the same over and over.
And
that one right there you have on the screen, that's a good one. That's a real good one.
That's a great one.
Because when you're looking at Ulysses Grant, who I think is the grandfather of Teddy Roosevelt, that's another story. But when you look at Ulysses S. Grant, when he was the president, 15 years later, you have James Garfield. And if you look at them, that's the same person 15 years later. And the wife is the same 15 years later. But when you see who the child was, Grant's child, then it starts to paint this picture that is really mind-blowing, but in reality it's so simple. It's so easy for them to do this. Jesse, or James Grant, is his son. That's the person that we know as Churchill. So you have Churchill running, of course, the English side of the war, and you have all of the Roosevelts. And in the picture down the bottom, you see Jesse, down with the Emperor Wilhelm on the battlefield, right? You also have pictures of Kermit Roosevelt and Teddy Roosevelt on horseback with the German emperor on the battlefield. You have all these connections to Germany, and all the wars that are because of German, they come out of Germany. People just don't even understand that it's the same family controlling both sides. And not only just with World War II. This is the same family, if you pull up the other one, that you can trace back to the Civil War and then to the Revolutionary War. The same bloodline controlled both sides of it. When you look at the Civil War and you look at Abraham Lincoln, we all know that he controlled the president and he controlled the northern troops under Grant, over Grant, who we just looked at right there, who became a president. Then you have the southern side, who was Jefferson Davis. He was controlling the Confederate side with Lee. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt married a Lee when he was his first wife. And that was a problem there. But when you have Jefferson Davis and you put him side by side with Abraham Lincoln, they were both 6'5" individuals, and they look almost exactly alike. They're brothers. So you had, this is why they always said about the Civil War, it was brother killing brother. Well, they really meant it brother killing brother, but the people didn't realize what they're saying, because you got both presidents right there, Jefferson Davis and Abraham Lincoln, brothers. Then you have the two generals, General Grant and General Lee, they're brothers.
Yeah.
So you have this, it's a manipulation, and that one was a bad one because that killed so many Americans, because that's who was involved, just Americans. It wasn't just like there was other countries involved.
Yeah.
It was killing all the fighting members of this world here, this continent of fighting age, which that made us weak, completely weak. And if you continue to follow this bloodline, you'll see that our founding fathers, they were all from Europe, all right? This country is made up of all immigrants. We know this, unless you're Native American, which your stuff got stolen, and it was bad. But it's mainly the royals that came over here and started this country. So you have to understand that, when you think that a bunch of Minutemen, this thrown together, with Spanish weapons at the time, when you think that force, that little army could actually beat the Redcoats, this massive, massive army. Are you serious? Are you kidding me? No, that doesn't happen in reality. They would have just wiped through and it been destroyed. But yet they looked at it as a way of letting us think that we won. So then what happens? They install all their course, the British founding fathers into positions of power. And when you look at our first president, George Washington, it's funny that during that time, George Washington was fighting for our freedom against King George. All right, King George, George Washington. They look almost alike. They're not the same person. But when you look at King George, he had like, I think it was 9 or 10 sons. And you go, well, wait a second. Okay, if they've done this in the Civil War, they've done this in World War II, what's to say they didn't do it back in that time? Exactly. It's the same pattern, the same thing, same script that they've been doing for beginning of time.
Yes.
Once you see that pattern, once you understand what I'm talking about, and you go, okay, there is a pattern here, I see what's going on, and you apply that to this war, I bet you, and I don't know, and I don't profess to know the history of other countries. I'm focusing mainly on the United States and our British ties, but I will almost bet you, I put my reputation on it. If you look at the wars that happen in other countries, I'll bet you it's the same type of deal. And I can't say that for fact, but if it happened in this scenario, why would they change it? It's easy to control the people, and this is the same rule book, the same playbook that they use over and over again. Yeah. So you look at the people that came out of that time with George Washington. You got Marquis de Lafayette, who was eventually from France, who I believe is Thomas Jefferson, who was best friends with King George. Thomas Jefferson is the Marquis de Lafayette, and Thomas Jefferson, after he was out of office, he became the ambassador to France. When you look at his wife, it's the same woman. So when you look at Thomas Jefferson as the biggest landholder in Virginia, and he was friends with the king, and you see this whole manipulation of the people of this country, and they set it up to the way they wanted it. And this was the American experiment that you've heard talked about. And it's been that way. That's why you have, where I'm from, Philadelphia, you have King of Prussia, you have all these royal names everywhere, but people don't realize, and they just don't think about it. They don't connect two and two together. But yeah, it all ties back to these royal families. The royals were the ones that created that printing press. The royals are the ones that still own that industry, and they're the ones that have been manipulating people, and they still are doing it to this day.
Well, that's
the
thing
same
too,
bloodline.
man. I mean, you can look at American history as far as how they name stuff.
Yeah, they're given names. Yeah, those are given names. George, it's a given name. But yeah, I mean, it's when you look, and then people go, oh, they're just look-alike. But again, when in doubt, check the spouse.
Check the spouse.
And there you go. And a lot of times, see, I usually don't like to get into history when it goes back before photography, because it's really difficult to actually say anything for fact, because we have no idea. We don't even know what Caesars really look like other than the bust that they created, and who knows how accurate that is, because they've created fake people. We'll look at King David in the Bible; it's all fictitious, but people believe they're real. So, when you look at George Washington and his wife I think was like 25 or 30 years older than him, and people were like, well, what's he doing with somebody that looks like his mother? Well, it's probably because it was a sibling. Again, it's the same patterns over and over again. But
well, the incestuousness of these people is common record, I think.
Yeah, I looked into that because people ask me all the time, since they see the work that I'm doing, they see the sibling fake marriages, and I say, look, modern day, I don't believe that. I know there's some of the DuPonts that's documented, and there are some of those large families that, yes, it's documented. But when you go back in history, they claim that, of course, a lot of the royals were incestuous, and that's why there was a lot of birth defects and things like that. I can understand it, but again, we're talking about people's word of mouth, and I don't put a lot of I just don't put a lot of clout into what is told to us in books when it comes to that.
Course.
So, hey, it could be, it might not be, but I don't put it past them. I really don't. But hey.
Well, it's the way I look at it is basically this: if you want to keep your family in power, you have to, at least to some extent.
That was a good one, by the way. You got up on screen right now. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but keep that one up there. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I'm keeping that up. There's one thing you have to consider, is that if you want to keep your family in line, in power, and that bloodlines, we'll call it bloodlines, you have to understand that there is a biological consequence to incestuality. There has to be. So you have to work around it somehow. And they've done it. We've had Barack Obama as a president.
Well, the Barack Obama thing, when I've did the research on him, And if you're not familiar with the work that I've done on him, I believe that he's a relative of Hearst, and this was the reason why he's half white, of course. But when you look at who his father was, the people say this person that they show is his father is not really his father. That's his grandfather, and they do this all the time. They use the next level. They skip a father because the father is too well known or whatnot. So they'll show this actor with the grandfather and call it the father because they do look similar, and yeah, you would believe it. But there's a big age gap in there. So when you look at actually who his father was, I do believe that his father was Richard Pryor. Now, the reason why there's a whole big controversy behind Richard Pryor, and this is something that's admitted on their behalf. Richard, when he was younger, he actually raped a girl, a white girl, and they admit to it, but they don't know who the child is. Nobody will talk about it. This is admitted by their people. I'm not making this up. This is something that they talk about. Now, the thing is about Richard Pryor and how Hearst gets involved in all this stuff. I believe that, Hearst had a supposed mistress that was in the comedy scene, and she owned comedy clubs. Hearst funded her comedy clubs, and you see there's a direct link between that and what's going on with the comedy clubs today, but that's a side note. So now you have Hearst with his mistress. They have a child. That child, I believe, is the daughter that Richard Pryor met and actually had that relationship with. Now,
didn't he have
at that point,
12 kids?
Well, Richard Pryor had a lot of kids, yeah, but this one in particular is the one that nobody knows who it is. All right, now the reason why, remember when Richard Pryor played on Saturday Night Live and he played the first black president?
Yes.
Okay, that right there, that's a slap in your face, and because now people are like, wait a second, okay, now he's not sounding so crazy now. It's not sounding crazy because the first black president, yeah. So here's what happened, and this is my opinion because I don't know for sure, I wasn't there, but this is what I could see happening. Since Richard Pryor had this child with this white woman at that time, that was bad. That wouldn't have been accepted. And make matters worse, is she was a Hearst family member. That would have been bad. So they took this child and they sent the child to Hawaii. Now, that's something that happened. All right, Brock was raised in Hawaii. So now you have Richard Pryor, who, of course, as this child's father, you could imagine what would happen. He would be pissed off, and he's like, okay, you're going to send my child into hiding. How are you going to make this up to me? Well, I could imagine him saying, I want him to be the first black president. And Hearst said, okay, yeah. And that's why you see Richard Pryor playing the first black president on Saturday Night Live. You see all these connections where Michelle Obama, I do believe, is Rain Pryor, and the other Obama sibling, I forget what her name was, but you can see that is Richard Pryor's daughter as well. There's all these, they look exact. That one in particular, that one's easy.
I don't have pictures of her, but I've seen them. I know what you're saying.
So you have pictures of Barack Obama with his white grandfather, who, and you look at it and you go, man, where have I seen that guy before? That's a Hearst family member. And then you can understand why, okay, it would be such a good deal for Hearst Publications to have somebody in positions of power, because what happens next, they control the narrative. And you can see that that's a logical thing. But the thing with Barack Obama, there's so much that was just bullshit that was swirling around that thing that, of course, with the birth certificate. Unbelievable. Just the fact that, not even to beat that horse, but just the fact that what we said before, you don't have to show a birth certificate, you don't have to show a driver's license to run for office. You don't have to. So he can do that. He's legitimately allowed to do that.
All he has to do is say, my name is Barack Obama, and here's a guy that's going to
Nancy
testify.
Pelosi did. Nancy Pelosi signed for his name. Yes.
There you go.
She signed for it in front of the notary. You can see his candidate oath form. It's available online. So, yeah, he didn't have to show an ID. So, people are like, oh, well, he was born in Africa and all that. No, actually, he was born in Chicago. He's an American. But the whole thing is, they create those fake stories to try to spin it off and muddy the waters and create more books about it. Create the buzz. That's what media companies do. Yes, content. So, yeah, it's sickening when you think about it. And you're like, I can't believe it. But, Richard Pryor, yeah, he did have a bunch of kids and he had a very big family. And, it was, there's so many ties at that time when he was president to a lot of, there was a lot of events that had to do with black individuals, a lot of police shootings, a lot of racial riots, things like that. And the reason why is because a lot of these individuals that were head of those events were relatives of Barack. And you can trace this back, and you can see. So the minute that he's out of office, well, all those, the Black Lives Matter thing sort of just disappears. Really, it's not anything. All the police shootings, we haven't really had a police beating really that anything that's been significant. So they shift roles. It's now Trump's families, Trump's friends, they're going to be the actors involved in all these things. So it doesn't matter who's in office. The narrative stays the same, and the people get conned over and over again, and they make money off it, profit.
Yes.